They were scouting the location of the South Lot. And now here it is showing up in Crain's Chicago Business, as written by Greg Hinz, that the Bears' actual focus is the lakefront for a domed stadium, not Arlington Heights. And Greg Hinz is writing it as if, and he says it very clear, it's not leverage the Bears' interest in the South Lot. Do you buy that it's not leverage? Do you buy that Kevin Warren is trying to spearhead a city-bound dome for the Chicago Bears? I have trouble buying it.
I'm starting to. Because people who have been in the room with Kevin Warren said that his tone has shifted on this as he's talked about it at different points. That it has shifted more genuine in the direction of the city. It's potentially all leverage. Getting photos with Brandon Johnson, bringing Brandon Johnson around,
I guess the definition of really good leverage is when it's believable.
Exactly.
And everything that he's done to build a relationship with the city and to showcase his love for the city and to actually have the news come out that they are looking South Loop.
Like if they're $100 million apart on the tax bill in Arlington Heights,
sure,
and he spends a year coming up with stories to make Arlington Heights blank, inviting Brandon Johnson to the suite on the day when he just so happens to have the professional photographer there who's following him around, doing the South Lot look, hanging out with mayors of different towns,
waxing rhapsodic about how he loves the city.
I live in the city, right? If he does all that for a year and it gets the Bears in the Arlington Heights that gap of $100 million, it gets it down to $50 million.
Right.
Kevin Warren doesn't make $50 million.
Well done.
You know what I mean? Like he could obviously create all of that appearance to just get Arlington Heights to blink.
And it's more than $50 million because we're talking about property tax value that annually affects them as they build. The whole thing, they're not wanting to pay the property tax value of a finished stadium.
Right.
They're wanting to pay the property tax value of this barren land that they're working on right now. And Arlington Heights is like, you're going to be putting something pretty good here. we believe that you should be paying more of that property tax. So yeah, it's 4 years, 5 years, depending on how long everything takes if they get the go ahead.
I mean, at least, and certainly to build everything around it too. It's gonna be a long ass time. Mm-hmm. What I feel like is what's happening is that if it was like two columns, like a pro con column, or maybe making an Arlington Heights column and a Chicago column, it has felt like Kevin Warren has been putting all of the positives in the Chicago column publicly and none of the positives in the Arlington Heights column publicly. But the thing in the Arlington Heights column that would tip the scales, if we can mix metaphors here and take it from columns on a paper to like a weighted scale, is that they own 326 acres of land in Arlington Heights.
Sure.
It's just hard. And yes, people say they could just sell it, but they're not real estate developers. They didn't buy it to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't buy it to flip it. They bought it to develop a property out there. And I know that because they said it when they bought it.
Layla Rahimi's colleagues over at NBC Sports had the scoop the other day about this discrepancy, the dollar amount, this $100 million difference in the property tax values. And the bigger bit of information in that was the timing. You remember the timing that was in there, that by the end of February, that the Arlington Heights, this issue will need to be decided, that they'll either move on or they'll come to some sort of agreement. So there is sense to this timing that this story comes out. Makes all the sense in the world. So if you are the Arlington Heights folks who've been counting on the stadium perhaps, but just want to make sure you extract a little bit more out of the property values, this could maybe scare you to the negotiating table a little bit more rapidly.
I just don't get, you talk about ballpark village in baseball, and I understand that the revenue in baseball is different than football, right? In baseball, there is revenue sharing. That is done from everything inside the ballpark so that the teams that have the best attendance have to share with the teams that have the worst attendance. That's like the very simplified version of revenue sharing. But everything you make around it, local media deals, rooftops, on-property restaurants, etc., concerts, if you own your venue, you get to keep. That's the local revenue that doesn't need to be shared, which is why Wrigley prints money for the Ricketts family that hopefully they reinvest all of it into the ball club. That doesn't give you the same advantages in football. There's a salary cap and a salary floor, and everybody gets to spend the same amount because everyone gets 1/32nd, right? The Jaguars get the same percentage of the deal with Fox that the Cowboys get. You know, the Packers get the same percentage as the Chiefs of the CBS deal. So in the NFL, it's much more equal. So, but still, the McCaskies would get to keep the Ballpark Village equivalent.
Yeah, and you build different things for a football stadium than you would for a baseball stadium because the baseball stadium, you've got 81 dates.
Plus the concerts.
You have so few dates at the football stadium. That's why there's going to be a lot of residential in Arlington Heights, you know, and a lot of shopping and things like that. Some ways to try and draw people for non-football dates, a Bears Hall of Fame or museum eventually, kind of thing.
It's all, but I guess what I'm saying is it's not as much of a competitive advantage. It's really no competitive advantage. It's just about which one would make the McCaskies more money. Because I would think that would be a great motivating factor. But maybe it isn't. Maybe they're like, we're wealthy enough. We're the Chicago Bears. We don't want to leave the location of the landmark stadium and the city, and we got enough money. We don't want to be real estate developers. We just don't want to play on Park District land anymore and have high school soccer games be on our field 36 hours before kickoff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We don't want Kanye lighting a house on fire at the 50-yard line before we play the Bengals. So I assume they are going to – remember that happened? That was a real thing that happened. Kanye West lit a house on fire at Soldier Field on like a Friday.
Granted, it was his own house. It was a model of his own house.
That was a thing that happened.